Okay. Hi, Dana. Welcome to the interview. So, who you are going to vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to vote for, well, I actually already did. I voted early for Kamala Harris
Okay.
and pretty much all the Democrats on my ballot.
Okay. So, is it because of any long-standing Republican persuasion, or are you particularly attracted to Kamala Harris policies?
A little bit of both, but there's definitely some nuance in terms of Kamala's policies. A main one for me is about women's reproductive health and rights, because I know a lot of the Republican Party's stance is trying to take away a lot of those rights. So that's a main one for me. And even just knowing a lot of their stances tend to be taking away rights, making it harder for people to have freedom of religion. I don't know what else. But so there's definitely a bit of both. I know that there's a lot of issues with the Democratic Party as well. So I'm very conflicted when it comes to that. I don't love the fact that it feels like we're forced to vote for the Democratic Party because the Republican side seems so bad, if that makes sense.
So, you are voting against the Republican Party instead of voting for Harris.
I wouldn't say 100%, but that is definitely a lot of it because there are a lot of things to criticize about the Democratic Party, especially what's been happening so far. But I would say on the whole, I align more with the Democratic stances and what they're trying to accomplish. So maybe a little bit of both, I would say.
Okay. Can you please try to keep it stationary?
Yes.
Yeah. So, what are some of the disaffections with the Democratic Party that you hold?
I mean, one main thing is the fact that, at least so far, in terms of Palestine, there's been a lot of, we're sending weapons to affect basically that whole conflict. And I'm really not happy with that. I mean, that's a lot of the main issue that I think I know within my peers we have struggle with. And, I guess that's in terms of the people currently in power. But the fact that has stood and that has been happening, I haven't been really happy with that. And I would say I can't really think of some other specific things on the top of my head, but I know in general, the current Democratic Party still leans more right than it has in the past. So, in terms of more liberal policies, there's still, I think, some ways that I would rather become a bit more, helping the people of this country versus trying to take control and making trying to make all these changes on other, on foreign lands.
Okay. Why people your age are leaning too far to the left these days?
I would say, if anything, it could be that same thing of because it seems like a lot of people are leaning very far right,
Okay.
that people are kind of maybe swinging in the other direction.
Okay.
I would,
So you
yeah,
are saying this far left leanings are driven by the activities of far right.
I would say probably. I can't, I don't know anyone personally or can't say, what it means to be on the extreme left, besides, I guess, that leading towards socialism. But I feel like that seems like what I've seen, at least, of things have gotten so incredibly insane in terms of, Trump's terms and the people who want to be a part of that. I mean, January 6th is a great example of the far right being insane. So
Mm,
I can see that some people might swing the other way.
okay. So a lot of Democrats are feeling that there won't be a peaceful transfer of power if Trump loses this election. What's your opinion on this?
I would say I'm worried about that. Again, just because of what happened on January 6th. I've seen on some social media people saying things like if Trump doesn't win, there's going to be, civil war, that they're going to start civil war, conservatives that I've seen. So things like that do make it feel kind of scary. In my mind, it feels like no matter who wins, there's going to be, I'm assuming, some kind of rioting and maybe for both sides, but I can see it not being very peaceful based on, even the way that when Trump won for the first time, it didn't seem like all that peaceful and respectful.
Okay. Why do you think that this country is deeply divided?
I guess a lot of it, I would say there's not a lot of clarity and information that's shared. I hate to say, all the misinformation and fake news, like it is sort of true. People sort of live in echo chambers. So, depending on where you live, maybe you live in a city, which tends to be more democratic and more blue, and with college students, and people are, they just have different education in that sense and just the people they're surrounded with. And then maybe if you're in a more rural area, or not even that, it's just the people that you're surrounded with and the type of media you're looking at. It's really easy to develop these opinions that get more and more extreme. And I'm sure there's a lot more to it. It's been a very long time. I'm pretty sure, what was it, George Washington didn't want a two-party system in the first place. So I think also a lot of politics has gotten away from the way our government runs and turned into, should people be allowed to get an abortion? That really doesn't feel like it should be part of politics. The politics should be, how do we want to do healthcare, things like that. So I think that's been part
Okay.
of causing that.
Okay. So Democrats are saying that reproductive freedom is on the ballot in this election. Do you believe so? Do you think that if Republicans win this election, they will impose a national ban on abortion?
I think it seems to be going in that direction. Obviously, currently it's a lot of the individual states doing those things, but based on, I know, the Republican Party doesn't say that it's part of Project 25, but even knowing what's on that, which is very explicitly about taking away rights and making medical decisions for women. So I can see that becoming an issue. And we've seen after Roe v. Wade, I've seen people talking about how, oh, excuse me, the same way that they took that down, they might also be looking to take down, what's it called, the divorce. It's
Dobbs decision.
yes. So it seems like they're basically going to take away,
Mm.
LGBTQ rights and make it so that women can't easily get out of a marriage, things like that. So I don't know how difficult it would be for them to do that in terms of the way that the systems run, but I think that is definitely a concern.
Okay. So in this, according to the survey, more number of men are going to vote for Trump, and more number of women are going to vote for Harris. Why do you think that there is this huge gender divide in this country?
I would say a lot of it is because of women's reproductive rights. I mean, there's always been a gender divide since the dawn of society. So it's understandable that we're still in that space. I mean, I have definitely seen a lot of women who are still voting towards Trump, but that seems to be the main issue. A lot of
Okay.
it is about, men being in power and a lot of women not liking that and it not feeling very equal.
Okay. So, I mean, contrary to the survey, lot of women are going to vote for Trump in this American election. Why do you think women are why do you think some women find Trump's policies appealing?
This is a very good question that I feel like I ask myself a lot. And I will say, at least in seeing, people smarter than me talking about this, some of it is definitely internalized misogyny. A lot of women still do believe that men should be in power, that men should have more control, which sounds crazy, but it is kind of true. Women, there are even some religions that say that men have power, should have power over women. And I don't know. I think some of it, again, is maybe just part of that, who you're surrounded with. And I'm sure there's a lot of other issues outside of women's reproductive rights that they might agree with. Gun right, I don't know.
Okay.
All the other ones, maybe.
Okay. So, are you saying that some women themselves are anti-women?
Yes, which sounds wild, but that is, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't want to no. I feel like it is, we've been in the society where women have not been in power for such a long time. And when the suffragist movement happened, when they were fighting for women's right to vote, many women didn't think that was right. And it was, maybe part of it is, it's scary to go against the status quo.
Convention. Mm.
Yeah. And maybe part of it is that they truly don't believe that women need to have these rights. But yeah, it's a bit confusing.
Okay, got it. So, since you spoke about the gun rights, so what's your opinion on the Second Amendment, which allows the American citizens to hold a gun? Because the red states are increasingly moving towards a stronger gun rights, and the blue states are increasingly stripping away gun rights. So, how do you see this shaping up in the future?
I would say it's definitely always going to be a struggle, because I think the goal of the Second Amendment was so that people could have independence, if, I guess, if the government were to make decisions on their behalf, I suppose. And it's basically, it's the right to protect yourself. But I think it's gotten to a point where it's less about protection and it seems more about control. So, we have more, what are they called? We have more machine guns, guns that can shoot so many bullets per minute that really aren't necessary. They're not
Okay.
even necessary for hunting. And so things like that, and the fact that you don't need a background check to get a gun. In certain states like North Carolina, they have gun shows where anyone can go and just grab a gun. And it feels more like they want guns for power as opposed to protect themselves. And it is kind of scary because there is data that, and I, can't quote me on this, I'm sure I could look up the actual resource, but that in countries that really don't have a lot of guns, like in the UK, there is a difference in the crime rate and the way that crime is taken care of. So,
Do you think Democratic Party should have had a primary instead of coronating Kamala Harris?
say that again.
Do you think Democratic Party should have had a primary contest instead of coronating Kamala Harris?
I think, yeah, it was a very unprecedented thing for that to happen. I would say probably, and I think that's another big issue that people have had probably with both parties, is that it doesn't feel like we have much of a choice in terms of who is on the ballot. Even though we have primaries, it really doesn't feel like we have a lot of control. And, lots of people who are dissatisfied with the Democratic Party, maybe even encourage people not to vote, but there is really no alternative. We're not all getting together to decide on a good candidate for a third party, for example. So I would say that probably would have made the people feel a bit more in control. And it was a sort of, again, sorry, one of those things that we don't really have a choice. And that
Oh.
didn't feel great.
So 80% of the wants to a survey says that 80% of the Americans want America to stand with Israel and support Israel in this war. What do you feel about it?
I feel like that is unconscionable. I think it's really horrible. I can understand why we created Israel. That was a big part of,
America was the first country to recognize Israel.
yes, and I've heard that even in the UN, Israel and United States are basically one entity. So I can see that way deep in the government, we have such close ties, and I'm sure there's so many things that we can't take control of. But I think it's really horrible. I think there's so much clear data that it is currently a genocide and not just people defending themselves once again. And I think that is a huge reason why lots of people are really upset with the Democratic Party and not wanting to make a vote that feels like it supports that. Seeing people signing missiles that are being sent to
Okay.
Israel is really horrible. So I stand with the Palestinians and hope that we can get to a place that
Okay.
our government can do the same.
Okay. So the progressive plank of the Democratic Party are in huge, is in huge support of Ukraine, but the same faction is against Israel. Why do you think that there is this divide?
I think it really is just those old ties to Israel. I'm sure there's some sort of connections and, I don't know, blackmail and stuff that's like way over our heads and really deep into the government that is making them do these things, even if they say they don't agree with it. But it really feels very hypocritical and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And like you said, it's just the opposite of what they did to support Ukraine.
Okay. If Harris loses this election, do you think it will be because of misogyny and sexism?
Yeah, I definitely think that will be a big part of it. Many people hate the fact that a woman will be in power. We saw that with Hillary too. I mean, there was a lot of other reasons that people didn't like Hillary, but even now, again, on social media, seeing people say that they're moving to another country if a woman is taking over. I saw one that was really great. They said they were moving to Iceland, who has a woman president. So that was really funny. But I think that's going to be a big part of it. Again, there's so much nuance and a lot of other policies that they agree or don't agree with, but that's always going to be a big part, not wanting a woman in power just because of deep set misogyny and sexism.
Okay. So, do you think Harris should start doing more interviews with unfriendlier media outlets so that she can present a case to the people that she can handle tough people and tough scenarios?
I think that always is a good idea. I think that is a big part. Remember, I talked about an echo chamber. Having actual respectful discussions with people with different views, I think is a huge way that we connect everyone in the world, like if we're only talking to people that agree with us, we're going to think that we're always in the right or in the wrong, and I think that would definitely be very helpful. Again, I can see that it's very hostile currently, so I can see why they wouldn't want to do that. Again, like you said, we've become so divided that it doesn't feel like it could be a respectful discussion, but I think that would be a big step in trying to bridge the gap.
Okay. Are you frightened about the future of this country if Harris loses this election?
Absolutely. I think it's, again, seeing things like Project 25 and the things that people want to accomplish, it feels like I fear for my own life, again, going back to women's reproductive health, but there's lots of things that make me feel like I wouldn't be safe or I wouldn't be cared for by the government, and that is very frightening.
Okay. So, how do you, let's have some nuance on the topic of abortion. So, according to you, how many months should be the limit for abortion?
Personally, I don't think there should be a limit at all. I think a fetus is not a person. If someone is getting an abortion really late, it's not because they don't want a baby, And if there is a use case of that they can prove, sure, if there's someone just taking out a viable baby and just because they don't want it, then maybe we can have a more detailed discussion about this. But I think setting these limits are pretty much arbitrary. Should we just keep going? See how it goes.
A bit louder.
Okay. So I really think that this is not something that the government should be deciding at all. This is something that is between, sorry, this is something that's between a person who's pregnant and their medical provider. So that's my thought on that.
Okay. So, what's your take on foreign policy? Should America be involved in world affairs or should America adopt an isolationist approach?
I would say that is something that I would love to dive into more and see what experts think more on, but because there has been reasons for us to get involved in the past during the Holocaust, things like that. I suppose were objectively a great reason to go get involved, but now there's cases such as the Israel and Palestine conflict that now gets into, well, why are we being involved like with this? Same thing with the Vietnam War. I don't know how we make those decisions more, how we get more people involved in those decisions, but as of now, I think that it's causing more problems than helping.
Okay. Thank you so much for the interview.
Of course. Thank you.